tell us what you're studying at the moment?
I'm studying politics and economics, and I'm in my second year.
Okay. And okay, let's take it back to the beginning of this whole process. How did you apply to university? Like, how was your UCAS process, personal statement? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Correct me when that was a while ago. Technically, I applied to do mechanical engineering. So I changed course sort of midway through my first year. So when I was applying with the intention of studying engineering. So most of my stuff was geared towards that. My personal statement was obviously geared towards what I thought I wanted to do, which turned out to be completely different to what I actually wanted to do.
Can I ask you why you changed your mind?
I didn't have an interest in it. Obviously, to study something at university, you have to, you're doing it every single day, 8 hours a day. So you have to have an interest in it. And I found that I was in lectures and just not caring. Basically, I had no interest whatsoever while I was studying. So I just decided to get into something I found interesting.
Okay. So what can you advise students before going to university to avoid that situation?
I'd say just think about it more. I made the mistake of just, because I was doing the same subjects as my mates and they were all applying to do mechanical engineering. So I just thought, well, if they're doing it and I'm mates with them, it would make sense if I did that. I just never really picked my A levels with the intention of doing that. So I was like 15 basically. So it wasn't really sort of old enough. I should have taken a year out really. If that would be one bit of advice, if you can take a year out. I know at the moment I think they're looking to make it so you can only apply after you've got your grades, which would obviously be a big help. But yeah, I just wasn't ready at that sort of age.
So you would advise that to first of all take a break, think about it, and if you're not sure what course you want to do yet, then just take a gap.
Yeah, because I was uncertain the entire time really before I even joined, but I just put that down to not knowing. My parents never went to uni, their parents never went to uni, it was only my uncles that had been, so I didn't really know much. Obviously they went quite a long time ago, so I had no real frame of reference for what it would entail or anything really.
Right, okay, that's interesting. Could you tell us about how you chose your accommodation and like what things you looked out for during the process?
Well, to be quite cynical, my main sort of criteria was just cheap, but not quite the cheapest. So I went for Telford. So I didn't really want to go overboard because I saw no need to go for an ensuite or anything like that. It's just obviously, and again, I never had any issues with that, and I was sort of partly constrained by the amount I was actually getting for student loan. Obviously, I didn't want to spend all of that just on accommodation because I knew I'd have to buy food. And obviously, at the time, Telford's quite close to the engineering side of campus. And I'm not in Telford at the moment, but this year I've been in Telford, so it's a pretty good location for just sort of centrally. As I say, that's another big factor. Just decide what you think you're going to need access to and go off there basically. And if you don't mind making your own food, then go to self-catered because that's a lot easier.
So like what were some concerns and worries that you had about leaving home? Would you say that making your own food was one of them?
Not necessarily a concern, sort of an issue, but I wasn't really worried. I knew I was going to be all right. I think just the main concern was just the unknown generally. I struggled in the first few weeks, basically just not knowing if sort of it was the right thing for me. Again, like combined with not just knowing if you're on the right course. Obviously, I now know that most of that was not knowing that I was on the right course. But it's just, I had no frame of reference. So just living in a completely different part of the country with people I've never met, and just having to suddenly do everything was quite daunting. But I enjoyed sort of getting into it, the routine of everything. That was, once you're in it, then it's suddenly like you don't want to go back.
Okay. So would you advise students to maybe get into that sort of routine first, like learn to cook, learn to clean for yourself, like before they come to university?
I suppose I would, yeah. Again, I did sort of the bare minimum with preparing. Like my dad taught me a few dishes, my mum showed me how to do washing, but I wasn't doing it at home before I went, so I just sort of threw myself in, basically. But if you can, I would definitely say that's a good, like if you have the sort of resources at home to try and get into the schedule before you go, then that's definitely a useful thing to do, so you're slightly less daunted and you can work out if you do have issues, exactly what they are.
Okay. How did you find the social side of university? How did you find making friends during that first few weeks?
I mostly found my friends through my course, really. Like I didn't really do the whole freshers thing. I think I went out twice and I wasn't really drunk enough and didn't really like it, so I went back in the cold, which wasn't the most fun experience, which sort of put me off for the whole of the first year. But some of the closest people I know are just from standing outside a lecture theatre and just being awkward and just being like, "Hi, you right?" And then you get chatting, and then suddenly just because again they're in exactly the same position. And my tutor group, they're still my closest friends from my very first year. So they're just, again, it's, I was worried like everyone else, obviously, especially going to Loughborough, like, big sporty people, but again, I found them because they were similar enough to me and on my course, so it's really not a worry that I think anyone should realistically have.
Okay, so it's about realizing that everybody else is in the same boat, basically.
Yeah, well, yeah, everyone else is wondering, like, should I stand here silently or should I at least go up and say hello? Again, it depends where you're from as well. Like, I'm from the southeast, you don't go up to people and say hello. You look down on the pavement and just keep on walking. So it's the cultural. Again, it's only the Midlands, but it's still quite a big difference to just see people actually just say hi. You just got to get used to that.
Okay. So you changed your course. So after you changed your course, were there certain expectations that you didn't expectations from your course and your lecturer that you didn't expect? And like, how did you adapt to them?
Certainly, obviously, it was quite a sort of drastically different degree. Obviously, the fundamentals are still there, so how the lectures work and how seminars work and all that, but I did history at school, so I was sort of aware of that, but it was definitely, obviously, a lot more reading. Like, if you're doing a subject like politics, you have to be able to want to read and not, get bored of it after a while. So that was definitely quite intense, but I say I almost had a benefit of having a trial first year, and so I already had that sort of work ethic and not, having the fear of missing out on, freshers and that, because I'd already sort of done it and knew that it wasn't for me. So I went into that year just with the expectation of just working, basically. So in a way, it sort of helped me.
Okay. So, like, what are some of the things that you would encourage students to take advantage of in terms of outside of their studies, or if it relates to studies as well?
I definitely say just like with society, is just find, even if you don't properly get involved in a society, just find something that you think might be of some interest, and then you can go, and then, because a lot of them have introductory events, you might just meet people there who might introduce you to something else. But I'd say probably the biggest thing is just talk to the people you live with, and just talk to anyone you see, basically. Like, no one's, the worst they're going to say is just nothing, really. Like, you can't really go that wrong. Like, if you talk to someone sat next to you in a lecture, someone standing outside a lecture with you, talk to the people you live with, like, you're going to be having breakfast, lunch and dinner with them, and God knows what else, so you might as well make the most of it and just talk to people, basically. That's my advice. Just it works, basically.
All right. Thank you very much.